There's been a recent change in leadership at a diocese in the southern United States. Bishop Martin Holley is here exclusively to discuss his sudden removal as Bishop of Memphis, Tennessee, and the possible reasons for it. The Youth Synod in Rome is now history. What should Catholics be concerned about in the Synod's final document? The Papal Posse, Robert Royal, and Father Gerald Murray are here with analysis. Finally, an update on the suffering church in India with one of its bishops, the world over, begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Bishop Martin Holley, Robert Royal, Father Gerald Murray, and an update on the persecution of Christians in India are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout. And now to our newsmaker to discuss his abrupt removal as the Bishop of Memphis and his thoughts on this abuse scandal and much more. Please welcome Bishop Martin Holley exclusively to the program. Your Excellency, thank you for being here.
Thank you so
very much. I wish you were here under happier circumstances. Yeah. Tell me what happened. In the reporting on your removal, we are told that you were removed because there was concern about major changes you had made in the diocese. You moved about 26 priests around, and there was naturally some discomfort with that. Sure. Is that why you were removed?
Well, you know, Raymond, I wonder if that is the case, because how can you not move? You have 7 people, yeah, 5 people who are retiring, 2 are going away. Mm-hmm. That creates, 7 vacancies. And then that creates, another 7. Mm-hmm. And it just begins that tumble effect. Mm-hmm. This visitation, to me, was to assist me, it said, in the operation of the diocese.
Yeah, they sent in Apostolic Visitation, which is a formal visitation by the Vatican, but Absolutely. You were told what about that visitation?
I was told nothing at all about the visitation whatsoever. I have no report whatsoever.
Nothing in writing?
Nothing in writing whatsoever. I was just told, I was given an envelope, and all of a sudden I had 24 hours or less to prepare for the visitation. Huh. I was told that I could also get a list of people that I wanted interviewed, so I had to go about trying to do that. Apparently, whoever it was had already gathered the names of disgruntled clergy,
The people who instigated this investigation, because usually it comes after a petition to the Holy See.
Absolutely.
So someone had petitioned it, probably
Well, there were
clergy?
letters. Yeah, and I would think, Monsignor, Peter Belcanani, because he had met with some of the disgruntled priests at the time, But I think this is latent with, some racism, privilege, people who were used to being in place and so forth and not wanting to move, Monsignor, MacArthur as well, I'm edified, that people love their pastor, but as bishop, I was doing only the things that a bishop would do.
Yeah. Your Excellency, you were an auxiliary here in Washington, D.C.
That's correct.
You were for 12 years. Right. How many years were you in Memphis?
I was in Memphis 2 years.
2 years? Only 2 years?
Yeah, right before my anniversary, I get this information.
Wow. Tell me how you learned that you were being removed. Did you get a formal letter from the Congregation of Bishops? What happened?
I received a letter, from Archbishop Christian Pierre.
Who's the nuncio,
the
Vatican ambassador in D.C.
This summer at the Bishops' Conference. And so I read it, and I was given the opportunity again to have 24 hours to be able to gather the people who would speak on my behalf.
But that's about the investigation. Right. How did you learn of your removal?
I learned of my removal when I was on a plane. I touched down here in Washington. Actually, I was on my way to Baltimore, and I received, a email from the nuncio wanting me to acknowledge, the fact that I was going to be removed. I met him previously the week before in Chicago in an airport, and he said to me that the Holy Father wants me to resign. I was shocked. And I said, why? I haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And so he mentioned your Vicar General, meaning Father Machado. And I said, he resigned. He's away.
Studying canon law.
Canon law. And I said, he says he wants you to become Bishop Emeritus. I said, but there hasn't been any canonical process in this at all. So I didn't understand that. I was shocked.
And you still have no explanation?
I have no explanation whatsoever. I said to him, I said, I have a right to appeal. He said, there is no appeal. And I said, why? I said, I want my voice to be heard.
Well, you have a due process that you should be afforded like any other bishop or priest or laity in the church.
I wanted to be clear. I never said no to the Holy Father's request at all. What I said is, I feel that my voice has not been heard. Yeah, I would never do that.
So how do you explain your removal? You believe that this may be an act of revenge.
It could be, I believe, because
From
Monsignor
whom?
Peter Baccanani and maybe even Bishop Steib, and it may be also...
Who was your predecessor?
Yes, in conjunction, with the nuncio, for whatever reason it may be, is that Monsignor Baccanani and Cardinal Wuerl have been friends ever since they were in seminary together. It goes way back. And I think somewhere along the line, because I, was making progress and doing the things that I was supposed to be doing, that he didn't like that.
Wuerl didn't like it.
I don't think Monsignor Peter Baccanani, I don't think he liked it at all, as well as...
Because you invited Cardinal Wuerl, who you served under here in Washington, D.C.
I did.
As an auxiliary in Washington. Right. You invited him to Memphis to speak on several occasions.
I did.
Yeah, but you believe that there's an event that happened in 2012 that might have soured his perception of you.
I was asked by the Holy Father, Pope Benedict, at that time, as I said to Catholic News Agency, I was asked to give a testimony as to the suitability, of his being considered for Secretary of State at that time. And I provided that. And of course, it didn't happen. I don't know if it's because of my, suggestions or recommendations, but it didn't happen. Yeah.
What was your relationship with Wuerl as an auxiliary?
Well, I've always respected him, but, we've had our moments, but...
Of disagreement.
In private, there was a particular moment, when one of our priests, said that he made a racist statement. And so, the cardinal was very upset, and he says, I'm not a racist. And the priest said, I didn't say that. I said, that was a racist statement. So he ended the meeting, and clearly he was very upset. And he said, I have never been accused of being a racist, and no one came to my defense. Well, he looked right at me when he said that. Later on, we had a meeting with this priest. I didn't want to be there. The priest wanted to be there, as support for him, but I was there in a neutral position. Yeah. And I'm not saying the cardinal is a racist, but what I'm saying is, the relationship, could have been better than what it is.
What about McCarrick? You served under Cardinal McCarrick. He ordained you to be a bishop. Did you ever see any of the abuse that we're now learning of, or any signs of that?
No idea whatsoever. I feel so bad for the victims. It is very, very sad for them. And I pray for them. I pray for their healing. Yeah. That should never go on.
Since you've made these allegations that perhaps your removal was retributive and that Cardinal Wuerl might be behind it, there has come forward these allegations from 2009, a blog where a seminarian said that you invited some kind of sexual favor upon him. You have denied those allegations.
Well, it was after I made, a testimony against same-sex marriage here in Washington, D.C. To the city council that blog went up. I find that quite interesting, you know, that something like that would come out.
And did you, you claimed you took those allegations, you informed Cardinal Wuerl,
I did.
Bishop Barry Nestout of those.
Absolutely.
They claim they were not informed of that.
Well, I did inform them. Yeah, I wanted to be totally transparent because when it came to my attention, you know, I went immediately to them because they were my superiors.
Are you surprised that here you sit, having attempted, and look, I've spoken to people, I will tell you in full disclosure, people in Memphis, people in Washington, some of your confreres at the Bishops' Conference.
Sure.
Near as I can figure it out, you were trying to right a ship that was a little off course in Memphis, let's be honest.
I'd
and I'm
say a
being
lot
generous.
off course,
Okay.
if you ask me.
Yeah.
There are quite a few things, especially in the tribunal, was my major concern, you know, because of the fact that it was understaffed. And that was a reason why Father Machado, I brought him in, because he was in canon law studies. Father, you know, James Clark was sent away. Father Donato was, you know, studying online.
And Father Clement Machado, our audience will know him. He's been on television here for a number of years. An exorcist, somebody who's, you know, very outspoken. And you brought him in from Canada. And there were some noses out of joint in Memphis that you brought a man in from Canada.
Sure, but I want to focus in on, you know, the cases. The cases in the tribunal, you know, they were just given out, I think, you know, in terms of their sentences and so forth. I felt, you know, as I just looked at a few of them, that they probably should not have been granted, and I was concerned about that. As a matter of fact, I had someone to consult on that area, and I put a hold on everything because I needed to do a further, deeper examination of the tribunal itself.
Might that be part of the reason that you were removed, that you were on the precipice of discovering something there?
That and other things as well.
In the diocese?
In the diocese, yeah.
Why are you coming forward now, Bishop Polley? This can't be an easy... I've known you for a number of years. You're not a showboater. You're not somebody who likes to, you know, run around the media. Why are you coming forward now? What do you hope to accomplish?
I just want my story to be told. I want the Holy Father to know the truth, because I don't feel that I have been given justice. I don't think there was a, you know, the process was fair. I think it's unjust, you know. And so somewhere along the line, I feel that the communication has not really gotten to the Holy Father. And this is the only way that I can get to him. I love the Holy Father. I pray for him. I would do whatever he's asking me to do. And I did exactly that. I was asked through that letter, through the nuncio. I've gotten out of the way. I would never do anything. I love the priests who are there. I have no animosity. I pray for them.
Yeah, but you need to be given, you need to be furnished as a bishop and as a man. What are the charges? Why am I being removed now? And give me due process. I mean, I have to tell you, just the bit I know about this case, it offends me as a Catholic and as a man that this is happening to anybody. I mean, look, I've known priests who've been charged. Some have turned out to be guilty of things, but they demand and we need due process for everybody. Then if you're guilty, bye-bye. But
if I was a bishop, I'd be concerned.
Exactly.
You know, I'm a bishop, I'm concerned. My brother bishops should be concerned. And priests should be concerned. You know, a due process is only fair. Tell me, what is it that I've done that I should be abruptly, you know, kicked out of my diocese and told to resign and become a bishop emeritus?
Do you find it curious at a time when we're talking about accompaniment, having a spirit of mercy, walking with people who need our assistance, that none of that was afforded to you?
Well, you know, my episcopal motto is His mercy endures forever. Okay. And again, I have no animosity against my brother priest, any bishops or anyone, Cardinal Wuerl, Monsignor Buccanani, any of them. But I want the truth to be told. That is why I'm here. I have a reputation, and the people who know me know that I am not that type of person that is being portrayed, and that is why I'm here.
This is why this whole case, something smells fishy here. And you deserve answers, and at this point, so do we and the people of Memphis. Do you hope your brother bishops will speak out and plead your case as you would plead theirs? I would hope so, because I think this is an injustice. You know, at this point, you know, I don't feel that I've been given due justice, due process, canonical at all. You know.
So.
Bishop Polley, thank you for being here, for being so candid. We'll keep you in our prayers, and we'll check in with you soon. And next, the Papal Posse, Robert Royal, Father Gerald Murray are here. But first, some news to share with you. Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, announced on Wednesday that one of his auxiliary bishops has resigned in an allegation of sexual abuse of a minor. Here's Cardinal Dolan.
I got some sad news to tell you, and I want you to hear it from me before it goes public, because I owe it to you. I'm your pastor, and you need to hear it from me. Bishop John Jenick, one of my auxiliary bishops and the longtime beloved pastor up at Our Lady of Refuge in the Bronx, he's stepping aside today because of a credible allegation of sexual abuse.
The Archdiocesan Lay Review Board has examined the allegation against Bishop John Jenick and found it credible. Bishop Jenick denies the allegation, but has stepped aside from active public ministry. Pope Francis wrapped up his month-long Synod of Bishops for Youth this past weekend. In the end, the Synod Fathers submitted a 167-paragraph final document. Joining me now to discuss this and much more is editor-in-chief of thecatholicthing.org, Robert Royal, and from Manhattan, canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York, Father Gerald Murray, the Papal Posse. Thank you all for coming together again. 2 weeks in a row. We hardly ever do that, but we're making an exception this time. Now, let's talk about this dance party. At the end of the Synod, there was a rather bizarre scene of cardinals, bishops, and young people dancing together. We'll roll some of this video. I want you each to respond to this. Not that anything untoward was going on, but the optics of this. Robert Royal.
Well, Raymond,
how's that for a lead-in?
I know it is not edifying on television to say I'm speechless,
Yeah.
but I have to say I was utterly shocked by this.
Me
And
too.
I was there for every day of the Synod, and I followed, in close detail. But when I saw this at the end, I said, we're supposed to be showing the young people of the world how the Church can lead them through the various uncertainties and difficulties of being a young person in a culture that's falling apart. But I saw this and I said, no, this is maybe the traffic is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no. Father Jerry, what did you make of this? And then there was Cardinal Baldessari, who was the Secretary General of this Synod. He sat at the piano and tickled the ivories playing Love Story, of all things. Your thoughts?
Well, this is the trivialization of this whole effort here. Youth culture should not invade the church with this sense of what really counts in life is entertainment, dance parties, and the like. It would have been much more appropriate if they had said the rosary or did a prayer service or gave thanks to Almighty God. It really is not a good sign that we kind of surrender to this notion that the church is only relevant when we adopt youth culture as our modus vivendi. It should be the other way around. We should inform young people of the riches of our efforts here, which is to bring people to God through prayer.
Look, I don't have a problem. And some people on Twitter said, well, you're stuck up and you're... Please, I'm from New Orleans. I celebrate Mardi Gras, Halloween. We do the whole thing. Second line with umbrellas. I'm all for that. The question is, at a time when you're dealing with a sex abuse crisis, are the optics right in having cardinals and bishops dancing with young men and women, with the strobe lights going? I'm not sure if that's the greatest image. Nonetheless, I want to move on to some substance. Synodality really took center stage in this final document. Now, this is a form of governance in the Church. The Synod Fathers had considerable opposition to the lines that dealt with this synodality because it was kind of sprung upon them. Tell us, what does this mean, Robert Royal? What is synodality, and why were so many bishops and cardinals upset that this came up so late in the game?
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly why this was introduced late. It may have been that all along the Holy Father wanted this to be an element, because it's clear that what happened is that he appointed 2 bishops to do those sections on synodality, which are basically the last quarter of the document. I just finished reading the whole document finally.
Oh, lucky you.
And look, synodality could mean just a kind of a loose acceptance of everybody being part of this walking together, which is one meaning of synodos in Greek. But it seems to be something more than that. It seems to be more of a kind of a democratization, a sort of horizontal move that everyone is going to be together in the church almost on the same kind of level, even though they keep saying there will be people with higher authority and certain, they'll occupy certain offices. But the strange thing about this is the way that this was inserted itself runs contrary to synodality, because synodality means you and I have a respectful dialogue in which we come to agree on what we're going to take the next steps. And instead, this was just inserted in Italian, which a lot of bishops do not even read, let alone speak. They were given a very short period to either approve or not approve this. So it was imposing sort of equality by tyranny, or a kind of an authoritative imposition of something that is supposed to not is supposed to dissipate the centralized authority.
Synodality, as I say, not as I do. Father Murray, your reaction to this, what do you think is the intention here? I mean, clearly no young people were saying, you know, we need a chapter on synodality, Holy Father. That's what the young'uns are really crying out for. Why was this here, in your estimation?
Well, I think this is what's become the experience now of the third synod during the reign of Pope Francis, which is that the document is used to further an agenda which is really not part of the discussion that went on the floor of the synod. Young people are not interested in synodality. They don't know what it means. Quite frankly, I'm not quite sure what it means, because it's rather diffuse. You know, we're talking about a synod of bishops. This is supposed to be bishops getting together, but the focus here seemed to be on synod of everybody. You know, the Instrumentum Laboris was prepared with young people's suggestions. Nope, there's no problem in doing research, but you know, if the bishops don't talk about synodality on the floor, why is it in the final document? It's obvious. It's the same thing that happened at the first extraordinary synod, where the notion of giving respect to homosexual couples in the church suddenly appeared in the interim document, had never been discussed on the floor, and there was a rebellion against it. So I think what we have here is a use of a document to further an agenda that is not really reflective of what was discussed at the synod.
I want to ask you, Robert Royal, this next question. In this synod chapter, this part of the document, there's a line about certification of websites. I want to put this up on the screen. It says, the synod hopes that in the church, appropriate official bodies for digital culture and evangelization are established at the appropriate levels to manage certification systems of Catholic sites to counter the spread of fake news regarding the church, and looking for ways to persuade public authorities to promote increasingly stringent policies and tools for the protection of minors on the web. Your thought on this? Are they asking for a certification board, if you will, a good housekeeping seal on Catholic websites?
Well, look, in the past we used to have an imprimatur, that a bishop would give his approval that this can be printed, that there's nothing contrary to the Catholic faith.
Those are books, those are written materials, not broadcasts.
These are not broadcasts. Look, as the editor of an online column series, and you as an active broadcast journalist, we certainly want true Catholic doctrine to be transmitted, and false ideas not to be transmitted. But what we hear here seems very funny. It seems like there are certain voices that we're hearing that we don't like, and that we would like to find some way to be able to rein in. I don't think, first of all, that's possible in the age of the internet. But it wouldn't be worrisome if I knew exactly who the censor would be, if it was you or me.
You want a list of the censors, yes.
We'd allow.
I'd love a monarchy where I am king.
But I think we're just in a world where you're going to have to allow a wide variety of opinions to play out in the public sphere. However, I mean, the Vatican has to respond to fake news, to false news or false.
You deal with false news by putting true news out, and you know, I hate to bring up old memories, but you'll remember it was the Vatican press office that cooked that picture of Pope Benedict's endorsement of Pope Francis's theological virtues. It turns out they edited the letter and took false pictures of it. That's called fake news. Who's going to approve that? Who certified that? So I worry about this. If you want true news, give true news. Be transparent. Respond in the moment. They're doing a better job of that, but hardly.
No,
they're
and
not
I
really
think
up to
that
speed.
passage that you read is, like many passages
Yeah.
in this document, is very vague, and then they tack on the end. Of course, we want to make sure that young people are not, accessing harmful material. That's unobjectionable, but it gets snuck in there as a way, I think, of validating what is a very vague and not a very appealing idea.
I want to open this up. In the synodality section, paragraph 150 is the most unpopular passage with the 65 synod fathers who voted against it. It's being criticized as vague language dealing with sexuality. Here it is. There are questions relating to the body, affectivity, and sexuality which require a deeper anthropological, theological, and pastoral elaboration to be carried out in the most appropriate ways at the most appropriate levels, from the local to the universal. Among these emerge those relating in particular to the difference and harmony between male and female identity and sexual inclinations. Father Jerry Murray, your reaction to that? I thought there was already a clear Christian anthropology. What are we missing here?
This is bureaucratese. I don't know how they think that this language is going to appeal to young people. This is talking in a way that is abstruse, and then talking about sexual inclination. Christian anthropology teaches that we are sexual creatures, male and female. God made us. So therefore, any inclination that varies from that is not really an inclination, it's a diversion or a perversion even. So vague statements of saying we must accompany people. The question is, where are we going? What are we talking about? Where are we preventing people from going, and if it's in a bad direction? If a young person says, I want to start taking up drug use because I think it's going to help me liberate my mind, we don't walk with that person and say, gee, have you really thought it through? No, we say, look, that's a dead end. Don't go there. It's the same thing with homosexuality in the church. There's too much of this notion of people are made by God to be homosexual, therefore we have to walk with them so they can learn, they can deal with it. That is not Christian anthropology. God made everyone heterosexual, and anything else is a perversion. We have to stay away from it. That's the liberating message. That'll restore confidence.
There's another paragraph here I have to share with you. It reads this way. Robert Royal, I want your reaction to this. The Synod reaffirms that God loves every person, and so does the Church, renewing her commitment against all discrimination of violence on a sexual basis. So all discrimination and violence on a sexual basis. Are you concerned that that might prohibit schools or businesses from firing individuals that may not be living in a moral lifestyle that comports with the owners of that business or with the values of that business?
Yeah, that passage actually echoes the passage in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which uses the phrase all unjust discrimination. And this is, of course, in developed countries, a very sensitive legal distinction that has to be made, because, as you rightly say, if a teacher in a Catholic grade school marries her girlfriend, and the church says, well, we're sorry, you're living a lifestyle that is not consonant with what we believe as a church, our own Supreme Court has upheld, by and large, has held up the right of religious institutions to hire people who are in harmony with their values. This passage is very worrisome to me in the sense that I don't know why that word unjust discrimination is dropped out.
Yes.
But as Father was saying, you just get the sense that there's a kind of a softening of what the teaching is in passages like this. And the odd thing, I want to make this a point because I just finished reading the whole document. The odd thing is, who is this document addressed to?
Right.
Usually it's the bishops meeting as a synod, come up with a document, present it to the Holy Father. However, this time the Holy Father was involved in parts of the drafting, not only through the bishops who wrote the passages on this synodality, but I think in actuality in other passages. So he can't be sending a message to himself. Is it a message to the bishops of the world? Is it a message to young people, as Father was saying? Because they're not going to read the document. I think it was Bishop Barron early on said, look, this is a big and a forbidding and complicated document. Young people just don't read texts like this. So we've got this text in which lots of this stuff has been inserted, and we don't know who it's intended for. I think that a lot of this is going to have to be worked out, but it just seems to me that what we've seen in the previous synods and in some of the ways that different offices at the Vatican have become soft on same-sex attraction, that it's a very worrisome thing.
One more passage, Father Jerry, your reaction to this. It reads, again, that's from that same section in this final document. In many Christian communities, there are already paths of accompaniment in the faith of homosexual people. The Synod recommends encouraging such paths. These paths help people to understand their own personal history, to recognize freely and responsibly their own baptismal call, and to recognize the desire to belong to and contribute to the life of the community, to discern the best ways to achieve it. Your reaction?
This language is very problematic because we know that there are apostolates in the church geared toward people who think homosexuality is a good thing that needs to be embraced. This was Dignity in the United States, which was reprobated by the bishops, and many other different groups exist that are promoting the normalization of homosexuality. There's a wonderful apostle, which is now international, called Courage, and that is an apostle which helps people with homosexual problems deal with it in chastity and in love and in integrated personalities. This sentence that you just read seems to indicate that we believe that there's a group of people who are homosexual and therefore have that identity, which then becomes for them the determining value of their life, and that the rest of us have to recognize it. And it's just not the case. Christian anthropology teaches us that heterosexual people may have a problem with homosexual attraction, but that can be dealt with through prayer, penance, and in the case of, where psychological counseling is useful, it can help people realize what's the roots of the fact that I've been diverted from my attraction to the other sex to a sexual attraction to someone of my own. And, right now in the Western world, there's a government effort to suppress that notion because they want to propagate the idea that homosexuality is normal. The church should not fall into that even in a small way. We have to really affirm that people who need God's grace in this particular matter will get it without being told falsely that God made you this way and therefore you should stay this way and that you should be welcomed, and then if you express it in different ways that this is good. I mean, is it unjust discrimination to tell two homosexual men you cannot marry? Is that unjust discrimination? Of course not. That's perfectly normal in Christianity. But in the minds of the homosexual propaganda wing, we're being unfair to those people. That's where the fight is right now.
I want to move on to this. The Pope called the final document the work of the Holy Spirit. He reminded people the Synod is not a parliament, and then he went on to say this. I'll put it up on the screen. It is a difficult time. Constant accusations dirty the Church. Now is the time to defend Mother Church from the great accuser with prayer and penance. This sounds like, again, a reference to Vigano and the Vigano statement. Your reaction to this, kind of, using the end of this synod to take a shot at the accuser or the accusers rather than on the guilty parties. Aren't they the enemies of the church?
Yeah, there's no sense of urgency still in Rome. I can tell you one of the things that is very frustrating when you spend time in Italy is that there is no attention in the Italian press or the Catholic press to the
sex abuse crisis.
The sex abuse crisis or the questions raised by Vigano, that they think that somehow Americans are puritanical and the American bishops have lost control of their own people and that this story is a kind of a false one. But in fact, this goes to the heart of the young people were very concerned about the abuse crisis. Now, I get the impression that the Holy Father does feel that there is a growing division within the Church because he asked all Catholics during the month of October to pray the Rosary, the prayer to St. Michael the Archangel, to offset the tendencies toward division, among us, because there are these different emotions now that are going on. But I think we have to recognize that these emotions don't just exist in a vacuum, that people belong to different factions, that in fact something has happened, not only in the United States, but in Chile, Honduras, Australia, Ireland, elsewhere, and the uncovering of these homosexual networks and the deep pain that's been caused to the Catholic people by their own children being abused by clerics and even by bishops in some cases, as McCarrick and some other cases we know of. this is not going to go away. It's not going to go away inside the church, and it's not going to go away now that secular authorities have interested themselves in it. So, does the devil try to divide the church? Of course he does. But in this instance, the church is going to have to go through a purifying period because there's been such a level of corruption that it simply can't be ignored.
Father Jerry, I've got to bring us up to speed on this latest story that broke this week. Catholic News Service reporting Vatican Nuncio, the former Nuncio, Cardinal Agostino Cacciavillan. He was the Nuncio here in the U.S. He claims he knew of rumors, and Rome knew of rumors, about misconduct by Theodore McCarrick going back as far as 1994. Does this seem to your mind and eye a vindication of the Vigano testimony, and how damaging are these latest revelations, do you think?
Well, this is showing what many people suspected and what we've discussed, that the matter of Cardinal McCarrick was known and was not acted upon. Now, Archbishop Cacciavillan said that he spoke to Cardinal O'Connor about the matter, because Cardinal O'Connor was in the neighboring diocese of New York, and he said that he would be the person to look into it. O'Connor reported back to him that he didn't find the matter to be verified. And then Cacciavillan also said that he did not bring this to the attention of his superiors in Rome. And quite frankly, that was negligent on his part. I'll say it right now.
Yeah.
If you have a report going on about sexual abuse by a sitting archbishop in the United States, and you simply handle it as a matter of, I'll converse with a neighboring bishop, see what he thinks, that's not enough. Now, when the Vatican announced that they're going to study all the archives of the Vatican about the McCarrick matter, that was a good move. It wasn't sufficient, but it's a good move because undoubtedly there have to be other correspondence related to McCarrick that needs to be made public. And I think Bob's point is absolutely correct. This matter should not be handled as a sideshow that will be slowly drips and drabs coming out. The Vatican should set itself a very high standard and say, we will make public all that we know about the McCarrick matter so that we can be held to the same level of accountability that we hold individual diocesan bishops to if there's a problem. The bishop in Wheeling, West Virginia was retired and put under investigation because of a report similar to what McCarrick did. Okay, he is out and he's being investigated. The McCarrick thing is dragging on and on and on. This is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob, I want to pick up on this because there's another story this week. I mean, we heard about Bishop Holley earlier, and something is clearly off in the church's governance as it concerns bishops, transparency. We're seeing some people get passes, others who are engaged in heinous crimes are allowed to sit in power and continue to ordain people and appoint people and suggest people as if nothing's going on. Something is clearly amiss. 60 Minutes broke a story this weekend. A whistleblower, the executive assistant of Archbishop Malone in Buffalo, and one of his priests also spoke on that broadcast. She printed documents, copied documents. Her name is Siobhan O'Connor. And she felt she had to come forward and share those. And then Father Bob Zilio. Here's what they both had to say.
The reality of what I saw really left me with no other option, because at the end of my life, I'm not going to answer to Bishop Malone. I'm going to answer to God.
A lot of cases should have been handled differently. They were not. A lot of cases probably should have gone to Rome at the time. They did not.
How many of those priests should have been taken out of the priesthood?
I would argue at least 8 or 9.
How many of them still are in the priesthood here in Buffalo?
All of them.
Your reaction to this, what are we seeing here? Put this in some wider context.
Yeah, well, I would say that this is the same sort of conscience matter that Vigano felt. That Vigano is near the end of his life. These people are younger, but still there are things that happen in your life, and you have a certain loyalty to the people you work with, and they probably expect a certain confidentiality, but you don't use that personal affection that you have, or the fact that there should be some confidentiality in the church to hide a crime. When a crime has been committed, you have a moral responsibility to come forth. I mean, you first go to your superiors and you ask them to do something about it. But if they don't do it, or they are themselves active in the covering up of something, I think that this is a conscience matter that we may start to see more and more occurring in the church. And you can't say that this is just people attacking so-and-so because they belong to one faction or another. We're getting down to the nub of a very serious abuse inside our own beloved mother church that has, frankly, something to do with homosexuality. The people keep denying that that's an element in it, but this is clearly tied to some elements of homosexuality in the church that haven't been dealt with sufficiently in the past and are going to have to be dealt with in the future.
Yeah, Father, it seems Bob's right. We are seeing these people coming forward out of conscience, whether it's Bishop Holley, Vigano, these whistleblowers in Buffalo. There seems to be a pattern here, and it all points to the negligence of bishops in many cases and the misuse of power. Where does this go?
Raymond, I'll repeat what I said in your broadcast a few months ago. The Holy See needs to appoint a tribunal to come in and investigate every archdiocese and diocese in the country, to go in there with the power to compel the production of documents, to compel testimony from witnesses, and then to produce reports which will identify precisely whether or not these charges against the bishop in Buffalo and in other places are true. Because quite frankly, after the Boston scandal in 2002, the Vatican did not do very much to investigate whether other dioceses had similar scandals. It was left up to the Attorney General in Pennsylvania and the various district attorneys in that state. Now we have investigations going on in many states. In my own state here in New York, there's an investigation going on. The Holy See should have gotten ahead of this. This is not the way the church needs to operate. We talk about communion in the church. We talk about a church in which we learn from each other. Well, the Holy See needs to understand the people of the United States are absolutely fed up by getting up every morning and reading about another priest or bishop accused because whistleblowers or some civil authority revealed it. Why didn't the church own up to these things originally? This is what I'd like to know. And basically, we need canon law to be fortified. Cardinal Burke has spoken about this, others. Canon law has to be fortified, and mechanisms such as a tribunal to try bishops, that is not ad hoc. It's permanent and it's known. These things need to happen because right now we are wallowing in this mess, and the only answer seems to be coming from outside the church right now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be coming to a head, and Rome is going about business as usual. You know, the Synod, I think, was a kind of glaring and to Americanized shocking visual of complacency, passivity. Father Boniface Ramsey, who was one of the early whistleblowers against McCarrick, by the way, came out this week, and in an op-ed in Commonweal, he said the McCarrick thing was a failure of fraternal correction. But I think he's underplaying that, honestly. But he also talked about a glaring lack of initiative in the face of horrible, terrific, tragic events unfolding in the United States. And Rome is doing very little. They have to clearly step up and do something soon, or they will lose swaths of the Catholic people, the confidence of those people in the United States. And that's not being an accuser. That's simply stating reality and wanting to save the church as it stands today and its moral voice.
Yeah, I think that in one way, Rome could at least deal with some of these earlier problems that cropped up in the McCarrick case. What kind of mechanisms took place? And this predates Francis. This is, the controversies swirling around Francis can be put.
Well, this obviously goes back to the reign of John Paul II.
Right. These can be bracketed a little bit for the time being. But there's something. I agree with Father entirely. We need a structural change here. We need an institutional change that is going to recognize that there's an internal dynamic that has gone wrong, and that it's going to find some way to hold people accountable in the future. And we know that there are many other cases that are going to be coming out, and this is going to be an embarrassment unless the church makes a move. Right now, I see almost no desire to do that in Rome. I talked with a lot of people while I was over during the Synod about these other questions as well, and it's utterly shocking to me that they don't recognize how important this is for the future of the church and the kind of impact that this has about the view that people have of Pope Francis here in the United States and elsewhere.
No, it speaks to the moral credibility of the moral voice of the Church in the United States and the world. It's that important. My worry is, again, we're focused on the dying ember of Theodore McCarrick. When you have major infernos underway in Buffalo and other parts of the United States and the world, and everybody just looks the other way and they're having a dance party and ratifying documents in Rome. I think to the Catholic people, that visual is unacceptable. And I don't know how much longer they will accept that without ramifications. Before I go, we have to address a very disturbing development in communist China. Authorities destroyed 2 Marian shrines this week, ostensibly because they were lacking the necessary building permits. Now, this is just after a month. It was only a month ago the Vatican signed a deal with Beijing over the appointment of bishops. There seemed to be a rapprochement. Father Jerry, what are we seeing here?
Welcome to the world of communist duplicity. Communist China has zero interest in the promotion of Catholicism in that country. They have total interest in controlling the Catholic Church. The Holy See, and sad to say the Holy Father, have fallen for a typical communist trick, which is to pretend that they're on your side and then to do the exact opposite. This is an absolute disgrace, this agreement that was made with the Chinese Communist government, precisely because it undercuts what we have taught people for years, that fidelity to the Holy Father comes before anything else, and the Catholics in China were faithful to that. Now that these churches have been destroyed, where is the protest from the Holy See about this? Where is the vigil in St. Peter's Square to pray for our communist Chinese, the victims of communist Chinese persecution among the Catholics and others? I mean, where is the urgency here? We've seen this trick so many times in history. It was done in Eastern Europe, and now in communist China. We are subject to that. The communist Chinese government that just destroyed 2 shrines, they're the ones nominating the bishops that are going to rule the church in that country, and the Holy Father has a veto power over it. That is one of the worst possible ideas you can come up with. And I have to say, Raymond, I'm glad you have covered this story so well. The Catholic media should wake up. This is what's happening in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. When these type governments persecute the church, we lose big time, and it's not good. We should resist this with some prophetic force.
Yeah, no, well, we've featured Cardinal Zen over many years and have been focused on this. I'm just heartbroken that we're seeing this play out. Robert Royal, you too have covered this and the sad history of the martyrs in China. What does this tell us? And the fact that we had a Chinese bishop invited to the synod, you were there for this, and he comes in, he's feted. We find out after the fact, not only is he a bishop, he's a voting member of the Communist Party. He actually votes in the parliament there against his own people that he's supposed to represent morally and spiritually. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, there's an old phrase that we used to use during the Cold War. Father Murray and I actually were together in Cuba when John Paul II was there, and we saw this live ourselves. We used to talk about the DNA of communism, it's the same absolutely everywhere. They destroy churches, there's this duplicity, you know, and whatnot. Now, the funny thing about that, there were 2 Chinese bishops. It seems, from what we can gather, that the Chinese government told the Vatican that it was going to send these 2 guys to the synod. And of course, the Vatican had to say, well, yes, well, and they can only come if they're invited. So then they were invited after they were told. But one of them, then they both, after a week or 2, decided they had to go back to China because of prior commitments. So, you know, how much they're engaged with the fact of the church and how much they're doing the bidding of the government, it's pretty clear.
They already got their orders and listened to the room. Enough. Back to the mainland. I'm going to leave it there. Robert Royal's commentary, as well as Father Jerry Murray's commentary, is always available at thecatholicthing.org. Papal Posse, thank you both for being here. There is a rising tide of violence against Christians in India by Hindu nationalists. What is happening and what's being done to stop it? Joining me to discuss is Bishop George Palliparambil. He is from the Diocese of Miao in India. Your Excellency, thank you for being here. I want to start with this persecution in India. What are we seeing now? Are these merely Hindu nationalists that are the agents of this persecution?
I would say more than nationalists, we should use the word fundamentalists, because nationalism is something very broad. and it could also be something good.
Right.
But fundamentalism is something that confines itself to a very few people and makes it negative.
And what form
And
is
so
this taking?
Is taking a very subtle form of infiltrating into all the aspects of life, so that the thinking itself is influenced, and they have the machinery and the ability to reach out to ordinary people's thinking, and so that makes the difficulty, that causes the problems. So
it normalizes it.
Yes,
it
exactly.
normalizes the persecution and the marginalization of people of faith.
Yes, marginalization would be more right than persecution. Because actually when we speak about persecution per se, that's not there, because there is no destruction of churches, there is no attack on persons.
Right.
Those are not there. But subtle ways of making life difficult.
I've read reports where there are up to 1,200 cases of persecution in the last 2 years, or maybe this marginalization that you speak of. To what do you attribute the rise over the last couple of years?
That's because in the recent past, these fundamentalists have gained a lot of control over the situation in the country. And so the administration in general is either silent or just letting it go. No administration is strong enough to tell them enough is enough.
One of the things you keep hearing from these people, your persecutors, are that there are forced conversions. You all are forcing, particularly people in tribal areas, to convert. Is that part of the narrative that they're trying to create?
See, there is a description that they give, but far from the reality. Because I live and I work among some of the remotest tribal areas of the country. And you can ask hundreds of thousands of people who have become Christians. No element of force and no element of incentives, as some would say, none of these. People have seen that there is something ennobling about Christianity, something uplifting them, and so they accept it. It is not conversion at all, but it is a transformation.
Tell me about this history of your diocese. You've been there for 40 years now. Tell me the sense of what you've seen. I mean, it really has exploded from 9,000 to now 90,000 believers, Catholics.
I would say it is just a natural growth of people, because earlier, till they came in contact with the Catholicism, they had no way of going to a good school. They had no contact with the outside world. They were small tribes confined to their village or to their little area. But getting in touch with the church, they found that they were becoming equal members of a huge family worldwide. And that gave them a sense of greater dignity. And also their accessibility to schools. Not only in that state we did not have any school, but in the whole region. They had easy access to schools, to medical facilities. So this made the bond deeper.
Are you having trouble maintaining, keeping those facilities open? Are these individuals now in charge starting to impinge upon your right to run these facilities?
Well, I have to answer it with a yes and no.
Okay.
Because we get full understanding and support from the state government. They have been, they see the good. In fact, in one of the talks, our previous chief minister, he said, we are very grateful to the Christians because these tribes who are so quarrelsome and wild, by becoming Christians, they have become so peaceful. And so we are really grateful to the church. The chief minister, Mr. Dorji Kandu of happy memory, he was a Buddhist, but he acknowledged this in public. So that is the attitude that the local administration has.
So where is the difficulty coming from?
So the difficulty comes from the bureaucracy that deals with the external, from outside the state, like maybe permissions, registrations on the national level when it comes some problems. But the state government is trying to help us out of that.
What can we in the United States do to help you and your people, and why have you come here to the United States?
I've come precisely because the Aid to the Church in Need, they facilitated some of these meetings, and they asked me if I could come and share my mission experience with others. And that's my purpose in being here. Because we have a church that I would count as a miracle of the 20th century. It is very much alive and active. And that did not come out as the result of preaching, but it is a result of our sharing our gospel values. So it is sprang from sharing. And so our church is led by, planted by, and nurtured by the lay people, particularly the youth. And I want to share this experience with others.
Very good. Your Excellency, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you on the show, and our prayers go with you, and hope you can rely on yours. You can learn more about the Suffering Church around the globe and how you can help by visiting Aid to the Church in Need at churchinneed.org. That's all the time we have for now. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. You can like me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. The links are at raymondarroyo.com. And get ready for Book 3 in the Will Wilder series. It's coming in February. Will Wilder, The Relic of Perilous Falls, and Will Wilder, The Lost Staff of Wonders, Book 1 and 2, make fantastic Christmas gifts. And then everybody will be ready for the big release on February 19th. They're all available at the EWTN Religious Catalog and at bookstores everywhere. Get them now. Be sure to join us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.